We talked about the battery a little bit. Look for the battery requirements on the motherboard or in the documentation. It'll actually say it on the battery. If your battery dies, just pull the battery out, take it to Walgreens, and you can get another one. Expect 2 to 7 years of battery life. That depends on how much you're changing and what you're doing and how much the thing is not plugged in, right? Also depends on the type of battery. Watch for battery failure indicators. So the BIOS starts to lose its memory periodically, things of that nature. You can also check the voltage on the battery. Replace the battery if a computer loses stored CMOS information more than once in a week. It shouldn't even happen that often. All other chips. Add-on boards may have read-only memory chips with their own basic input-output system data. This is very common. Device drivers could be required to provide BIOS support for hardware. This also is very common in newer cards. Sometimes you need to download specific drivers for them depending on how your setup is and what you're using and that kind of thing. Also, you'll talk about this more in later classes, but sometimes when you're downloading drivers from places anywhere other than the manufacturer, you're asking to get the computer infected with a virus. Do not download drivers anywhere else other than the manufacturer's website. Don't go download it off of a torrent. Power on self-test. Power on self-test is also called a POST. Power on self-test, POST, checks every primary device at startup. The beep codes, so if you have a problem like the memory card's not seated right, so you have a memory card and you go to put it in the slot but it's crooked, the BIOS will beep a certain number of times for that. So just Google 12 beeps on boot up, or whatever, however many beeps you're getting, and then it'll tell you what the problem is. So beep codes indicate basic connectivity problems before and during the video test and the RAM test, right? So it tests the RAM, the video card. Those are critical system components. If it can't get those, you get the beeping. And sometimes you may not get the beeping if you have like some of the newer motherboards where the speaker's not built onto the motherboard and it's a little thing that you add on, and if you didn't put that on, then you may not have the beeping. So if it's just not booting up and not doing anything, then you might want to reseat the video card and then check the RAM and make sure that it's seated properly. Or make sure that you install your speaker so you can listen to what the motherboard is trying to tell you. Errors displayed on the screen typically indicate problems after the video test. For example, the keyboard's not plugged in. Errors can be fatal or non-fatal, and you can also set that in the BIOS whether or not you want to halt on any errors. POST, Power on Self-Test cards, display codes that you can decode from the manufacturer's manual. So there used to be cards that they would stick in the motherboards, and as they were building machines, they would power it on without it being hooked up, and the cards would tell you if there was a problem or not, and they would tell you an exact number and the exact problem. So in summary, you should select a computer case for ease of use and expandability. Not always. You might want one specifically for airflow or to fit a certain desk, or there's all kinds of reasons why you'd pick them. They come in all shapes and sizes now, even open ones that just sit on the wall. But for the test, remember, open ones are not good for the test, okay? So don't say that for the test. If that's an answer, don't select it. Electromagnetic interference, or EMI, can harm surrounding equipment. This is true. If you have something really whacked in your computer, or a really poor chip or something that's malfunctioning, it could put off enough radiation to actually affect you, your cell phone, other little devices around, like maybe your Bluetooth won't work, your wireless mouse or something won't work, which I don't recommend wireless keyboards and mice for security reasons. Motherboards use different chipsets with differing capabilities. You want to read about that. They have like IHC2 chipsets and stuff like that. Make sure you read about all the details. The devil is in the details. It is a difficult job to go and actually select a motherboard. It requires a lot of reading and investigation. Also look for reviews. So you can type the chipset space reviews. The ROM BIOS chips can be static or updatable. That's right. So static is fixed. You can't change them. Or they can be updatable, where they're EEPROMs, right? Electrically erasable read-only memory. So you can erase it and then rewrite it. There's also BIOS upgrades, so you can upgrade your BIOS, which is very important to be able to do. New memory chips can come out. Your board can support it, but the BIOS isn't configured to do it. So now you need a new BIOS. And if you have a static BIOS, almost all of them are upgradable today, then you would have to go and throw the motherboard away and get a new one because it can't be upgraded for the RAM that you're buying. That used to happen. It's not very common today. A CMOS program accesses the BIOS, the basic input-output system information stored in your CMOS chips. So if you change your hardware, you must update the CMOS to reflect changes. This is true, but you can't just go and change the hardware. You have to make sure that that motherboard and that BIOS support the hardware, right? And if the BIOS doesn't, then chances are you'll be able to upgrade it. But if the board doesn't, then it's just not going to work. You're going to need a new motherboard. So all these parts have to be compatible. If you change hardware, you must update the CMOS to reflect the changes. So just remember, if you're going to change it, you got to make sure it's supported. A CMOS battery ensures that CMOS information is saved. This is true while it's unplugged.